This is Maureen Kafkas, the Brain BS coach, here to tell you about the episode today. In this episode, I speak with my good friend Jane from growing up on Youngstown, Ohio on Selma Avenue. We've been friends throughout our entire lives, and I recently became her coach a couple years ago. And this is a story of what was happening in Jane's life at the time, how we ended up working with each other, and all the gifts that both of us have received from one another in this process. I can't think of a better way to end the Women Who Inspire series than with my good friend Jane. We did experience some technical difficulties, but I love the energy of the interview, so I decided to use it anyways. So sit back, settle in, episode 144 of the Brain BS podcast, Learning to Hold Space with my good friend Jane. Do you want more out of your life, but not exactly sure what that might be? Are you longing for something but can't quite put your finger on what it is? That is the universe speaking to you, and it is time to listen up. I'm your host, Maureen Kafkas, the Brain BS coach. I created the Brain BS podcast to help people define what success means to them and show them how to get it. I help you to let go of fear and doubt and prepare your nervous system for success. I show you how to understand your own energy and to trust yourself to make all the decisions. If you are ready to go inward and stop looking outside yourself for all the answers, this is the podcast for you. Now let's get started. Hello and welcome back to the Brain BS podcast. I'm actually starting to laugh right now. Let me even start because I have my friend Jane here, who is literally one of my favorite people in the entire world. And I have her here today because she has inspired me in the last year more than any other person has. And she had no idea of that until we just started talking about it before the call. So I'm going to let her come on. We've been friends for a long time. I just want to mention, because I think it should be known to everybody, that she did
Oh,
throw me off my bike when I was about 8 years old, but we did still stay friends. So you knew that was going to make the podcast, Jane,
yeah,
right?
I knew that was going to be at the tippy top of the conversation.
Oh, you're breaking up.
Oh no.
I know. All right, we're going to keep trying to go with this, and if it gets too bad, then we're just going to we'll have to do it another time.
Fly me to Chicago.
Yeah, but usually all the times that we talk, it doesn't happen.
I don't understand. It must be on your end then, my dear.
Well, I do Zooms all the time. So.
I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
All right. Back to the episode. We're supposed to be talking here
Oh,
about our inspiration.
you're gonna have a lot of editing to do, by the way.
Okay. No, I'm not editing that out.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
real honest, authentic interactions. Unless it's
Okay.
crazy because we do it too much. Let's get back to, so why don't you introduce yourself and say whatever you want to say to start with?
Well, all right. Thank you so much for putting me through this. And I am Jane, born and raised in the great city of Youngstown, Ohio. There might be a little bit of sarcasm in my voice, but it is home, and it is where I met you. I'm the middle child of five, and to to a professor and a nurse, and am out and proud and a grateful alcoholic.
All
And
right.
that's
Oh, go
my
ahead.
that's my intro.
Okay, that's your intro. All right, sounds good. All right, so I'm going to start the podcast by letting the audience know how we kind of started. We've been in and out of each other's lives off and on over the years. We had a long span where we didn't talk when you were in San Francisco. But since then, I would see you when I would go to Youngstown, and it would always, like, there was always an issue around like whether you were drinking or not, because there's different periods of your life where, well, I'm going to let you share a little bit about your past, but I just
Uh-huh.
want to say that we had been going back and forth, and there were times where I would text Jane and she would answer, and there were times where I would text her and there was no answer, and it would go off and on because your motivation to change your life would go in and out. So let's why don't you give the audience some background, and then how we ended up interacting again? We'll kind of tell that together.
Okay. Well, I guess right from college, I moved to graduating college. I moved to San Francisco. It was 1986. No, 1985. And about a year later, I got sober because I was living in a city. I'm sorry, I don't even think it was a year. I think it was maybe 6 months. It took me 6 months to realize that I couldn't control alcohol. And I was in the city, totally reliant on myself, no support um, financially from anyone. And I was terrified that I wasn't going to be able to sustain a life in this city because I would drink and couldn't stop and would miss work, miss, not getting up for the alarm, whatever. And all through college was experimental with all kinds of drugs, and drinking was totally acceptable, no matter if you were in a blackout or not. That's just what everyone did. And it was like everyone took turns, it seemed. But I knew I had an issue with alcohol. And it was when I moved to San Francisco that I decided I needed to see what all of this AA was about. Got sober. Um, Ended up going to AA and finding a incredible community there. And I was a young dyke, and there were a lot of lesbian AA meetings, so I went to a lot of meetings. And that'll keep you sober. That really helps to keep you sober when you're going to a lot of meetings, sometimes 2 a day. It was like a major social event, really. And, it was a bonus that you got to hear some people's truth about the disease of alcoholism. Um, I was sober for I was sober for 9 years and 364 days. The day before my 10th anniversary, I drank the beer.
Do you remember, Jane? Do you remember what it was that made you decide to do that?
Very clearly, it was about 3 days after I got out of a mental hospital, having tried to commit suicide. And I said to myself, once I got out, well, this sobriety isn't working, is it? It's not keeping me wanting to stay alive. So I chucked it all away. And it was fine for a while because I had 9 years and 364 days of sobriety in my mind and in my heart. And I was terrified. So I really controlled it. I really had a lot of control over it. And then I drank for 20 years after that, and lost a lot of friends along the way, and moved, lots of relationships ending, moved cross country back home under the guise that my mom and dad were getting older and my sister could use a hand. But really it was because, I wanted my mom. I was falling apart, and I needed this, of all people, I needed to heal with my mom. So moved back here, and still was maintaining. I guess I was a maintenance alcoholic. It was just in the last 10 years, after a very short-term marriage, that caused me to move back to California, but this time in LA, which is me and LA do not get along at all. Um, so after 14 months, I got once again back cross country and back to Ohio and drank for 4 or 5 more years when I got back here to a degree that was concerning for everyone around me. Um, it was a daily thing. It was torture. It was decisions that I was making in blackouts, driving in a blackout. It was dangerous for me and for everyone else. And I didn't, the second time they say is a lot harder because you do have, you do have the knowledge that you gain, but you're trying so hard to stuff that knowledge from AA way back when away to make yourself right and to make them wrong. And it makes it so much harder to to come to terms with the truth once again. And so getting sober was, I thought, nearly impossible. And in those 20 years, like you said, you've been in and out, I've been in and out. You always reached out to me. It's pretty typical of me in my life to kind of just fall to the wayside and let friendships kind of fall where they may. If not for some of you beautiful people that are consistently reaching out to me, and you did this time, at my darkest hours. I made too many promises that I wasn't going to commit suicide, and I couldn't. So there was no way out except for possibly maybe getting sober, because I took that promise seriously, that I wouldn't put people through what I put them through when I tried the first time. So
Well, so I'm going to stop you for a second, because I think it's really important to know too, how much time you spent. I remember this, how much time you spent preoccupied with death.
I mean, even just as a kid, when I found out the truth that we all die, I've never not obsessed about death and how absolutely terrifying it is, and how incredibly sad to lose your grandfather that you love so much. And so I had a preoccupation with death, and I would do risky things to try to sort of see how close I could get. And just kind of thoughts about different ways of driving over the Golden Gate Bridge or the Bay Bridge, if it were to collapse, which is not completely unheard of.
Yeah.
But I would drive over the bridge every single day, twice a day. So I had a lot of thoughts about dying on those bridges.
And
And
if I remember correctly, the day that I reached out to you to check on you again, because I would check on you, because
yeah,
I always felt I don't know, protective sort of. I don't like
yeah,
what's the word I'm thinking of? I just felt protective of you, like always wanting to look out for you and see what was going on, and check and make sure you're okay. And my intuition that day told me to. And then I think, if I remember correctly, you had written a note on your board because you were considering committing suicide again.
oh God, yeah, you're right. I forgot about that. On the chalkboard.
Yeah, and that's what inspired you to talk with me, because you didn't know who else to talk to, and I was there. So you were open to talking to me. And then we started talking, but you were also going to work with a therapist that you had started to work with. Um, well, so why don't you tell the audience a little bit about that?
Yeah. It was, I didn't want to, uh, I was concerned because I was broke AF, and I didn't want you to, sell yourself short, because I wasn't going to be able to pay you what you deserve. Um, and so but we have a friendship too. So I was, you know, I, I tried to justify it because we're friends. Um, so I obliged myself with your help, um, and you were gracious enough to show up for me and to hold that space for me, and I'm just so grateful and indebted for that. Really, truly, that was, when my therapist, uh, I had been through a lot of therapy in life. I been through, to a lot of workshops and had a lot of coaching before that. The coaching was successful in my past, but I was just a little bit negative about AA, a little bit negative about therapy, about talk therapy. Like none of that worked, obviously, because look at how miserable I am after 50 years, 55 years of in and out of therapy and all self-help books and all of that. So I was very, very much like, I'm a lost cause, basically. Um, but you refused to let me believe that. And that's when the notion of my brain BS started to started to clarify things. Um, and so you orchestrated the most beautiful support group for me because I was opposed to going to AA meetings, and there was no way that you and I alone were going to get me sober. So you
Oh,
were
okay,
gonna.
well, I'm gonna stop you there because this is like this part was I want to speak a little bit to this too, because
Okay.
as coaches, we're encouraged not to work with people who need therapists. We're told mind your limitations and stay in your coaching realm, but if somebody really has emotional and mental health issues, they should be seen by a therapist. So when we started working together, I was like, perfect, I'll work in, with this therapist too. We'll both work with Jane. But then the therapist got injured or hurt and she was out of the picture. So then I had to decide, and it wasn't even a decision because my intuition was immediately like, oh yes, we are doing this. And and I thought she was going to come back into the picture like when we did that.
So did I.
Yeah, but then so when we decided to do it, and you weren't kind of negative about AA, you were adamantly opposed to AA. You're just like, no, I'm not doing it. So that one of the number one things you did to inspire me, amongst many, is I thought, well, she keeps saying that she doesn't have anyone. She keeps insisting that she doesn't have anyone. There's nobody there that loves her. She doesn't have anyone in her life. So we decided to go through all the people that she loves and she for throughout her entire life, all the people from San Francisco, wherever, and she made a list, and we got the email addresses, and she gave me permission to reach out to see if they would be willing to get together in Zoom meetings and kind of provide a support group for Jane. And I have goosebumps right now because it was so freaking awesome,
Yeah,
wasn't
yeah.
it?
Well,
Oh
it
my
was.
God. And it was perfect for me because you could never again say that you didn't have anyone. I'd be like, oh, shut up. You got a whole
Yeah, right.
community and I saw them and I talked to them. So I don't want to hear it anymore. So, all right. So,
Yeah, you were right. You were right. You know what brain BS was telling me, and I got to see for a fact that I had been lying to myself,
yeah.
and I had kept myself isolated.
And didn't you have a drink before the first meeting?
Oh yeah. Oh, for
Yeah,
sure.
we were there like encouraging her for her sobriety. But see, that's also the second thing that she taught me, which is huge, is to hold space for someone and to let people heal in their own way and at their own pace. And so we got together for this meeting. Do you want to talk a little bit about the first meeting? Because I think we were all in tears. It was amazing.
Oh, and I hadn't seen. I'm gonna cry right now. Um, you know, the there were some people in San Francisco that became so close to in the fellowship, and my best friend Claire um, showed up to these Zoom meetings every week, and I hadn't seen her because life changes. I'm drinking. She's in recovery. She's following her Buddhist journey. And so we didn't really have a whole lot in common, but for 10 years when I was sober, I'm sorry, for almost 10 years,
Oh,
uh, she was the she was my home. She was where I could go and feel safe. But the first one to respond to the emails that she would be there. Um, and there were maybe six of us, friends from here in Youngstown that were in my sister-in-law, another a friend who was trying to get me to go to AA for the last 10 years in Youngstown. She showed up to one of them. And that was the beginning of learning how to shut my thoughts, just to recognize them and know that what I was telling myself was just falsehoods, and that I was loved and that I was needed, um, and that my life was worthwhile.
yeah. And and I tell you this all the time, but it's the craziest thing because everybody loves you so much because of your personality and your sense of humor. You're absolutely hilarious and so lovable. And you're the only one that's ever not thought that you are.
Well, and my mother,
Well, yeah.
just one
Well,
other.
I guess we do have to bring your mom into it a little bit because that's where a lot of issues stem from growing
Oh,
up. And Jane, you also went through, which we don't have to get into, but you went through a lot of traumatic things that the audience doesn't even know about when you were younger. So it's not like you just went off to college and were drinking and you drank too much. I
right.
mean, you
Yeah,
were you were like self-medicating for a long time.
that is true. Thank you for bringing that up, because it is important, that I acknowledge that, and that I am not alone in that either, for God's sakes, unfortunately. um but I am a victim of sexual assault, and I guess sexual, would it be assault, sexual,
Yeah, it's sexual assault when you're how old?
15.
Yeah, yeah,
um yeah, a therapist said, when I was dancing around it, trying to come to terms with what had happened to me um years prior, she's like, that's rape. I was like, what? Yes, that's rape. I was like, okay, now that's a different window that I haven't been looking at. That and that was the first time that I started feeling like, oh, I'm maybe not all to blame for this happening, because I had carried the burden of that myself for many years, and drank and used a lot of drugs to not feel the shame that I felt so deeply.
Yeah, well, I think it's definitely like that's a big part of your story. And I also
Yeah.
think that you were like we grow up in families and there's like a tribe mentality in families. And in your particular family, like it wasn't something that from leadership down, it wasn't going to be something that was talked about.
Not 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 at all. Not at all. And many years later, when my perpetrator was dying of brain cancer, my mom thought that I should know because I was so close with the family. And at this time, I had some recovery and had been in therapy and had been, you know, doing the work on myself. Um, and I told her, she said, why, I don't understand your reaction to his diagnosis. And I said, because he raped me, Mom. And she said, the, well, I don't know what to say. That's just some things like that you just don't talk to your parents about. So that was the end of that conversation. I came out and I let her know, and that was her reaction. And with that, it's sort of it, I sunk. I took a risk and it felt like I failed and that it wasn't worth it. And so I buried that. And um
And you buried the shame,
yep.
so
Yep.
much shame, and then trying to get away from the shame and numbing yourself from it with the drinking and the drugs and also like your relationships would have to suffer because you wouldn't be able to be emotionally present with other people because that's one of the first things that we started to talk about was our relationship that we have with ourselves, that we can only treat other people and be as present for them as we are for ourselves.
Yeah. Last night, a friend drove through Youngstown, with her daughter, coming from Wesleyan. I don't know that college, Wesleyan College. And she's known me for, 40 years, which is gut wrenching to think that I know anybody for more than 40 years. But there I'm looking at you right now.
And we're lucky to be able to have this conversation after 40 years of knowing each other.
Right. You would think that maybe you'd someday forget that I pushed you off your bike, but here we
Never.
so, oh yeah. Now I
So
was going on.
this woman from Westland College came by.
Yes. Oh, I'm so sorry. I cannot remember my train of thought on that.
That's all right, sister. It happens to me all the time.
All right.
It'll,
So,
when it comes back to you, you can let me know.
okay.
All
All
right.
right.
So when we were talking about this, so then I just want to speak a little bit about what it's been like because Jane has showed up at all like so they were taking a little reprieve and a little break because she's doing really well after all the time that we've been together, but we have gotten together, or we did, every single week for a really long time, and I was like, wow, like Jane's really in it and she's sticking with it. It was so awesome and it was so great for me because it taught me so much about what kind of coach I want to be and what I want to value. Because at a certain point, then I hired a business coach who told me I shouldn't be coaching you anymore for free. And I listened to her. I listened to her about a lot of things related to money and about how I should do my business. And it felt really shitty. And it made me just second guess everything about coaching and step away from it and focus more on what I want to do. And she actually made me so mad and which was actually the best thing ever. Cause I was like, I'm freaking doing my coaching business the way I want to. And I'm coaching Jane again if she wants to keep doing it. And I reached out to you and you said you wanted to. And we continue doing it. And it's been amazing, hasn't it?
Oh, I can't even begin to put into words how, I mean, what a gift that this is, and you're telling me that my working with you is a gift to you, and I'm just blown away by that. But I did show up. I was committed because you are giving your time and your expertise, and you are meeting me where I'm at. And I could not, I mean, how I was just so grateful. And and I need to be accountable. You help me remain accountable. And um yes, it's been quite miraculous, really. Um and I've learned a lot, and you've given me the space to then try to, apply it in my life. And you know, when I need a little nudge, you are, you're there to sort of like call me on my BS. And I love what you've taught me. And oh, I know what I was going to say. Speaking of that, with my friend that's known me for 40 years from California, um, I hadn't seen her in a while. She is friends with my ex-wife, and that was sort of a traumatic situation. Um, and I looked at her. I was a little bit nervous, but I looked at her when she asked me how I was doing, and I said, "It's taken me a lifetime, but finally, I'm, I finally found my life. I finally found the love that I have for myself that's been buried for so long." And I didn't say that crying. I said that
Oh,
just because I haven't felt this joy it's in so long, if ever. And Mo, this is not an ad for your, but I really do feel that I almost owe you my life.
oh, that is like, oh my God, I can't think of anything better to hear from you than that you love yourself and that you love your life again. Because and it was a process too, wasn't it? Because I could
Yeah.
tell immediately when we got on a call, I'm like, uh-oh. Like sometimes you'd be pissed, like kind of have a chip on your shoulder about having to be sober. Then other
Yeah.
times you would look great and be totally into it and like excited. And also, I want to point out to the audience too, something else that's interesting because it's brain BS how when you said you didn't think it would be possible to get sober, because you would keep getting sober for 30 days. And
I
then
did.
you
Yeah.
could drink again. So you had the ability to, it just really speaks to how our thoughts create feelings and those lead to actions and give us our results. It took you a while to truly believe
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
you could stop drinking longer than 30 days. And then
Yeah.
it took over a year for you to actually realize that your life could not just be neutral,
Right.
but it could actually better. And you were in a job that you hated. So immediately being Miss Gun Ho, who first started coaching with you, I'm like, we need to get you out of that job. And
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
didn't leave that job. We just
Okay.
helped you change the way you framed it and the way you looked at it. And then you were able to stay at that job until you were
Are
ready.
you frozen?
No, I was still talking, but yeah. All right, wait, let's go back then. I'm going to go back to that. We're dealing with some technical difficulties here, so I'm going to be editing this, but I'm just putting that in here because I definitely want this because this is, you know what? This is us.
Yeah.
Having these difficulties, it's messy, it's like all over or whatever. Like, but I don't want it to be annoying for people to listen to. But
Right.
I'm talking about, excuse me, how you had the job at the prison and
Hmm.
how bad you hated that job when we first started talking. Like it was demoralizing to you. And you thought that it was the job itself, right? You were certain that it was the job. But
Right.
after just a couple sessions of working with you, you completely reframed the way that you looked at it. And that was miraculous in itself. That was like, wow, this really is true that our thoughts create our feelings that lead to actions and give us
Yeah.
our results. Because then you were able to stay there for like a whole year.
That, yeah, that really, some I don't. linked to the job. It's, I know that I knew that it was going to be temporary, but I knew that I needed to stay there until I could figure something out, until I could like sort of wrap my head around what was going to happen. But you helped me manifest this new job in a way that, you know, I, I mean, I believe in all that stuff you taught me for the last 2 years. I believe it. I've seen the results. Um,
And what about Turner?
and it's incredible.
We
And
manifested Turner too.
yes, that's exactly right. That's exactly right. And that she's sitting here right now.
Turner's her dog audience, and she needed a dog, but she was
Yeah,
thinking she couldn't get a dog because of her situation. And I was like, well, let's just envision getting a dog that somehow it's going to work out. And that's sort of how manifesting works. You think about what you want, you envision it, you get the feeling of what it's going to be like having it, and then you kind of let go because you
yeah,
don't know how what's going to end up happening. And but you ended up getting Turner.
I did. And I got that from manifesting what I needed at work in order to stay at that job until I could get another one. Um, and I got on. I was They weren't accepting restrictions for any of the officers. And I went on a physical restriction that I couldn't work any more than 12 hours a day. So, and I also got a job in visitation. So my schedule was more set. So I wasn't on a rotating schedule. So I could get this dog. It's like I figured out what I needed to make this job work for me rather than it, just work me to death.
Yeah.
And
And I think it's important with the manifesting is there's a lag time. So when
yeah,
you start manifesting and you get into a really good space, things don't just appear. Sometimes they do, but
yeah,
bigger things, it takes them a while. So you kind of have to trust the process that it's coming because there is like a lag time with it.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. Um, and when it does happen, it's like, holy shit, and I'm seeing evidence of that like on a daily basis. Today was kind of a rough day, but um, because I could hear some churnings in my mind that made me uncomfortable. But I know what to do. I have the tools to turn those thoughts and take those thoughts, acknowledge them, let them go, and I can change my perception of the day like right then and there. I don't have to stew on it or ponder it or, pontificate ad nauseum about it. I can, change my attitude.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that makes any sense. I just,
Yeah, it totally makes sense. No, that's
I,
what work is all about. And it's not about feeling good all the time, but it's also about not making it a huge deal when we don't feel good.
yeah,
It's not the end of the world. There's not something like I'm horribly wrong with us when we
yeah,
even have a bad day or a bad week even. Like sometimes you just feel crappy when you're a human with a brain, and that doesn't it's not a problem. I really the more comfortable, and this is something that you experience through your sobriety, the more comfortable you get feeling uncomfortable emotions,
yeah, yeah.
the more you heal and the more you evolve and you start becoming the person that you really want to be.
That's where I was last night. That's what I felt wholly in my body, that I am becoming the person that I want to be. I am becoming the person that I knew that I always was, but I could, like, it's like this, like I had this like I was detached from it and I couldn't grasp this person in me. Sobriety is amazing. Um, to think how low I was just 2 years ago, and to wake up every morning um, feeling like there's hope, feeling like there's connection, feeling like I can walk into a building with all these people and not feel that shame that used to just envelop me and make me want to just turn around and run away to the nearest bar, of course. You know, I'm just, I don't know. Is it a pink cloud? I think this pink cloud has lasted a lot longer um, than previous, and I'm just, I don't know.
It's not, it's joy. It's not a
Yeah,
cloud.
yeah.
Your head's not in the clouds. This is your reality now, and you created it. And I want to say also, because I also have somebody who recovered from addiction in my Men Who Inspire Me series that's going to come on in August. And I
Okay.
said this to him, and I'm going to say it to you too, that sobriety is not a one and done type thing. It is something that requires a commitment and a daily practice for the rest of your life. So that's why I think it's totally inspiring. Aside from everything you've inspired me in terms of how to be a coach, the fact that you continue to choose sobriety and you've committed to it, especially from where you were emotionally and mentally before you started this sobriety journey, is so inspirational. And I just think that anybody who's using a substance should never give up, because you are on the verge of giving up.
Yes, I have a story if we have time to
Yeah.
real that I was at work today. I was working outside, and I work at a justice center, um, a family courts, and a woman she was screaming when she was walking out of the building, going to her car, screaming and yelling and crying, "I lost my kids! I lost my kids!" And I don't know her story. Um, but my first instinct was that um, she lost her kids because of addiction, and I sent her this energy like it's not too late to if I can do it, you can do it. And I'm just hope for her and for her kids, because yeah, it's a bitch, but it's possible. And when you surrender. And remember, I just would call myself a drunk and refuse to call myself an alcoholic. Like there was that kind of like just making light of it in some way. I am full on 100% alcoholic, and I am over 2 years sober. So if that can help anyone, just know that it's possible.
I just got total goosebumps because I remember it took you a long time. In fact, that might be the first time I've heard you actually say it so emphatically that you're an
Oh,
alcoholic, because it was at least a year in that you were just like, well, like your brain would want to offer
yeah.
that
Yeah.
maybe you could have one sometimes. And it's pretty amazing the hold an addiction can have on a human being.
Yeah. Cunning, baffling, and powerful. Those words mean so much more to me this time around. Let me tell you, it had a hold on me, and I was terrified because I promised I couldn't kill myself. So, um, that was the only option, and I really didn't think it was going to happen. But I'm here, and I'm grateful, for you, and I'm just grateful for everyone in the Zoom support meetings, and shout out to my buddy Claire, who has since passed away. Um, I dedicate every day of my sobriety to her as well, and she led a life of um, pure goodness, and just I I feel her with me more now than ever.
Ah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Is there anything we didn't talk about that we didn't hit on today that you wanted to mention in the podcast episode? I love the idea of giving people a platform to say whatever it is they've always wanted to say, and don't say anything inappropriate about me.
God. See, I can't think on my toes like that.
Well, no
Uh,
pressure because we talked about a lot, so we might have touched on everything.
yeah, I think I've pretty much said it all.
Did you want to apologize for pushing me off that bike?
Um, how many times do I have to do that?
I want to get it on the podcast.
I, Jane, do solemnly apologize to Mo for pushing her off her bicycle on Selma Avenue back
Thank
in 1970, whatever.
Well, that's been a long time coming, and I can't think of a better way to end the podcast. So, audience, I know you learned something valuable here today. I'll see you next episode. Thanks for being here and learning about Brain BS. I hope you enjoyed listening to the episode as much as I enjoyed creating it for you. If you did, please take a little time to do a quick review, give me 5 stars, and share it with everyone you know. If you're actually interested in being on the podcast yourself or have questions about it, you can find me in the Brain BS podcast community on Facebook. See you next time.